Call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody here. This is a special call board meeting. This will be about the COVID-19, an update that we recently received. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Barry Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Let me start out by saying I know it's probably an inconvenience to the board, and I appreciate y'all coming on official short notice. Talked to Mr. Winkler, and I guess he consulted Mr. Beller. We wanted to make sure that we done it in a proper manner, being in a situation, you know, we said the whole time we didn't want the public to feel like that we were dragging our feet. We've had a lot of research and time went into every decision that we made. But on the other hand, we didn't want to make the decisions and then and not be keep everybody as much as we could informed and have to make a lot of changes. I had several of the board members, and I also had Mr. Roger Duke contacted me through a board member and told me he had some information that he felt like was very important. I know I'm getting asked a lot of questions. The central office staff, Kim being in the medical field, we're all getting tons of questions about school opening, this and that. I just felt like this information was extremely important for you to know, to pass on. I'm not asking you to do anything, that's a decision for y'all, but I do feel like you need this information. Even from Dr. Duke, I included the cover letter because I don't want you to think I'm ever leaving anything out. That's what he gave me. He explained some stuff to me that I guess was way over me to understand. I actually dug in. I still need to do some more digging, but I'm a numbers person. He showed me some things that I felt like we need to look at. I'm going to turn it over to him for question and answers. I think, and let me say this about him. I commended him earlier today. I called and thanked him, pre-thanked him, I guess, because he don't have to do what he's doing. He's like, he doesn't have to get the criticism that say I do because I choose this for a job. Dr. Duke doesn't have any children in the system. He's just doing it out of love for the county, and he has a tremendous insight. He has a tremendous feel of this thing for as anybody I've talked to, and that's what this is an update. I wanted you guys to hear what I'm hearing so that you can pass it on to your people in your districts, your teachers, and your principals, and so on. So, Dr. Duke, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
At this point, unless somebody's got any questions for me, the board, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Duke, let him explain the information. I said we got Mr. Lewis, you with us? And then Mr. McCaleb, are you with us?
I am with you.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. We got everybody here. And I've also got the two high school principals because I know not that they're more important, but they have so many different extracurricular activities. Just if you got any questions and answers for them, okay? And we did have the governor's update this week, and we did have the TWSAA, a little news from them, so I just thought it was a good time to catch everybody up. And I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Duke.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith. First of all, I thank you for letting me present to the board members and to you this afternoon. I did get in touch with you guys because there's been a lot of changes, as everyone knows. I met with the principals, Mr. Berry, and some of the teachers on the 7th. I guess it was July the 7th. And then again, I was at you guys, the board's members meeting on the 16th as well, and I provided some information and some guidance, hopefully during those times. But basically, the things, this COVID virus, things change pretty rapidly on that. What we knew yesterday is not necessarily what we know today, and the next day, it just changes so rapidly, and even more so in Smith County. So there's been, even though we were on I was on a board meeting call on the 16th, things have changed drastically since then. So I felt like that I needed to, I would be amiss if I did not at least come back to the board and say, I need to tell you about what I'm finding, what I'm seeing, and or that has some of the changes that's happening. Really, Smith County, we really haven't been doing too well as far as our numbers go. I'll start out by saying that one of the reasons why that I'm worried about the numbers on the outside, not necessarily the numbers in the school, but numbers on the outside, which is just the community numbers, so to speak, is that there's been study after study and research that's been done noting that when the transmission rate is high in the community, that's a very high risk of it getting into the schools in larger amounts. So the higher the certain transmissibility, and the higher the spread, the larger amount of spread that's in the community, the higher chance that it's going to get into the schools. So that is the whole premise of the reason why I'm coming back to you guys. And I suppose everybody got a chance to take a look at the handout that I passed out. And I've got a few extra slides and some things that I want to go over, because even since on the 27th, when I made those graphs and handed that out, things have gotten worse over the 27th to the 29th and 30th. So I will give you a little bit of an update on that as well. In order to, every day I put out numbers on my Facebook page, and a lot of those numbers, there's 20 different categories that I put out for the community, for the county, and I do it for all the counties from Tennessee, by the way. So if you look at my spreadsheet, it's all of them, and I follow those very closely. And some of those numbers, they mean certain things, and some of them you have to look at them in context as to what they really mean, what they're really trying to tell you. And so that's part of what I'm doing tonight, is to take some of the numbers that mean something with the risk of our children going back in person in school. That's the thing that I'm concentrating on. And again, I'm concentrating on Smith County. I'm not really concentrating. You'll hear me talk about adjoining counties. You'll hear me talk about Tennessee, the whole rates in Tennessee, whatever. But what I'm mostly interested in, what I've followed all along, and trying to follow and keep, is my primary concern is what's happening to Smith County. That's and what it means for our school kids and that sort of thing. So we call some of these numbers that we follow, we call metrics. Metrics just means a way of measuring. And the first metric that we need to look at is called the positivity rate. And that's just a fancy term for knowing how many positive tests that you have, and the total number of tests that's done over a certain period of time. And the reason why why we need to know that is because that's an indirect indicator of community transmission rate in the community. So as the positivity rate goes up, so does the community transmission rate. And why is that important? Was because when the community transmission rate goes up, the higher it goes above certain thresholds, the more likely it is for, if you put children in school together, no matter how safe you can make it, it's just a high chance that it's going to spread in the school just fast and quick and a lot. So that's one of the things that I've been looking at, and of course I look at it every day. I've been following it since February, so I look at it every day. But basically, a positivity rate of 3% or less over a 14-day period bears a very low risk of spread. So, and that's community spread and transmission. But that also relates to the spread, the likelihood of spread in the schools as well. So 3% or less is what you really, really want if you're going to start putting kids back in school. Now, there's another threshold called it's a 5% positivity rate, and a lot that that is acceptable as well, but it's a higher risk. But a threshold, which is a 10% positivity rate over a 14-day period, it's a very high risk for spread in the schools when you put kids back in person. And I don't know, is somebody there that can show the first slide for me? Or do I need to share? You need to share it. Oh, you already got it up. All right, good. All right, that's the first slide. And I believe I'm looking there. If you'll look at this slide here, this is a comparison of the test positivity rate for Smith County and our adjoining counties, and also the positivity rate in the state of Tennessee. Now remember, what we're looking for is thresholds, and you can see I looked at I put in there the 3% threshold, the 5%, and the 10% threshold. And you can see that Smith County is at 10.4%, and now this was as of the 27th. This was done as of the 27th. The only one that's higher than this is Macon County, 9%. And something that's interesting is, believe it or not, we have a higher positivity rate than the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee only has an 8.05% positivity rate. So that means our transmission rate is higher than the average of the whole state of Tennessee. So that's something. Now, you'll notice too, that if you follow my numbers, you'll notice Charles County often has 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000 cases. Well, you'll notice there that the percentage there, that is corrected. And what I've done is I've corrected that. I've taken out all of the numbers that show up in the prison system down there. That doesn't really count with us. That's almost a total population of the city within itself. So that doesn't really amount to anything as far as the transmission rate outside of the prison system. So you can see this is where we're at. We're at 10.4, which is it's not only above the 3% threshold, which most cities look at opening up the school. It's above. It's not only above the 5% threshold, which is a little higher risk, but yet it's still good. We're above the 10% threshold, which is very, very, very high risk of transmission in schools and within the schools and within the schools itself. And so that's one thing. If we go to the next slide now, I don't know. Oh, you're all right, good. You got the next slide. I'll go to the next slide. This next slide, if you'll notice, that was done yesterday. I didn't make one for today, but you notice already that our rate has already gone up. It was 10.4% yesterday, and it's already gone up to 10.9. It was 10.4 on the 27th, and 2 days later, it's already gone up to 10.95%. So not only are we too high, we're going in the wrong direction with this thing as far as the transmission rate goes. And of course, the statewide positivity rate actually went up a little bit too. It was 8.05 on the 27th, it went up to 8.16. And so, and another thing that's interesting about this is, if you look at the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the CDC, and the health and the education system, when they're talking about how we should put our children back in school, and that these rates are low, transmitting from child to child and from adult to child and that sort of thing, that they were basing that on international studies, primarily a study out of South Korea. And because we haven't done that here in the United States yet, so we don't know for sure what that's going to do in the United States. But it's kind of one of those things that it may be looking at apples versus oranges, because most of these places outside the United States where we said it's safe to bring the kids back in, and with very low transmission rates, their community transmission rate was below 3%. Some of them were close to 0%. And so we're looking at a transmission rate of today, as of yesterday, around 10.95%. So it's hard to believe that we're going to get the same results as they did because our community transmission rates are higher. Now, people say, well, what has the community got to do with the school? Well, I think I've documented a lot of my sources and resources and studies that has been done, and I've got 2 or 3 more that I did not put on that. That it is well known that when the community rate is high, so it's more likely to get into the schools. It's not a theory of mine. The research shows this. So the next slide, I believe, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. And I'll go with you to that next slide. The next slide is the daily positivity rate. We're still looking at the positivity rate just like we did before, and we still have the thresholds here. But what I did is I looked at the positivity rate starting from the first time, which I believe was March the 31st is when we started looking at the positivity rate, and I carried it on out through until I believe it was the 27th is when it was. And you can see there that before we started going above the threshold, you can see it along about June the 21st, we really started, that positivity rate started climbing, and it started climbing sharply. Now, if you look at the top, again, this was done on the actual graph was done on the 27th, and that shows the 10.4% like we were talking about as far as positivity rate. And you notice I've got a little call out there that says 10.95%. Rather than redraw the graph, I just put that in there that it's actually higher than that peak is. But that's really not significant when you look at the whole graph, because the whole thing I wanted to show here is the green line, which is a linear trend line. I calculated it out. I didn't just draw that in there. There's a reason X and Y that's in there. That's not just something that I threw in there. So in a linear trend line, what a linear trend line means, it shows that there is whether it's a steady increase or a steady decrease, it remains the same. You can see that is a steady increase. The blue line is a 14-day, what we call a 14-day moving average. The reason why we do a 14-day moving average is that smooths this line out a bit, and it's more, it can confirm the other trend lines, which it does in this particular case. And you'll notice both of these trend lines are going up, which means, again, we're going in the wrong direction. But, and this shows that we're not looking at one singular set of data. We're looking at the whole set of data. A lot of it gets really concentrated on the trees and doesn't look at the forest. What I showed you a minute ago was the trees. What I'm showing you now is the forest. This shows how it got where it's at today. Okay. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll get to that if you don't mind. All right. And somebody's on the ball there. Thank you. Another metric that we use is the average new cases of COVID-19 per 100,000 population over time. And that's a big, long word for just, it basically is a way of measuring how many new cases we have over time. And that also is a well-known indicator of community transmission. If that is high, that means the community transmission is high. And again, as we've said, we can correlate that with when the community transmission rate is high, it also means that it's going to get into the schools quicker and it's going to spread into school more. That's the correlation between the two. Now, some people call this evidence-based incident thresholds. It's the same thing. It's just got a different name. It's the very same thing. So, and when I say it's going to do these things, it's not just me saying that. This is the CDC. These are people that's a whole lot smarter than I am that I read about every day. I run this by epidemiologists that are friends of mine that I know about. That I'm lucky to have friends that are epidemiologists. They help me with this at times. So, what we'll look at on this next graph. We can go over that graph. This is actually from the state of Tennessee. This is a screenshot from the state of Tennessee. This was a screenshot from the 27th. And the only things that I put in this is just the box, the red box around the lower portion, which is 38.62, and I wrote in threshold of 10 COVID cases per 100,000. They just had the trend line going across there, and they told you what that was somewhere along down the line. That's just marking where the 10 mark is, the average of 10. And basically, anything over 10, anything over the threshold of 10 is a high risk of spread, and a high risk of spread in the community, and a high transmission rate. And also, again, that relates to getting into the schools. And once it gets into schools, it spreads. All of this just correlates together. So, and you'll notice that we need to be under 10. Well, on this particular day, which was 27, the average was 38.62. We're not below 10, we're at 38.62. That also shows you that as of the 27th, we're having 7.79 new cases, an average of that a day for that last 14 days. In other words, we're having almost 80 cases a day on the 27th of COVID. So that shows you how this is spread. Now I'm going to go to the next slide, if you don't mind, if you can. And somebody's already done it. We'll back one more back, if you don't mind. They look alike. Go back one back. There we go. So this is on the 29th. Okay, the other one was on the 27th. This is on the 29th. And if you'll notice, not only are we were at 38.62 on the 27th, we're already at 42.51 of those on this. And we're in over, if you look at the 14 days there, we're looking at over 8 individuals a day. So I did this to show that we're going in the wrong direction. I mean, we're going in the wrong direction, and we're going fast. The more we go, the faster we go, getting out of line. So again, above 10 is a very, very high risk, and we're at 42.51 as of yesterday. So that's it. So if we go to our next slide, if you will. Now this may be a little bit more complicated to understand, but don't let me. I'll explain it. This is called the R0 value. That's what they call it. You know, back in the old days when we talked about zero, we called it a naught. Well, that's what they call it. When you study epidemiology, they talk about the R0. It's actually an R with a little zero, sub-zero value. And basically, what this shows is how much one-to-one transmission we have. If you're below it, it means how many people one person can transmit it to. Okay, and this helps us understand that we're still probably linear, and we haven't gone exponential quite yet. I see it going that direction, but we haven't quite gone exponential yet. Exponential means one transmits it to 2, 2, 4, 4, 6, and so on and so forth. So if you can see here that the blue ones on the left is looking at 430, 41 to 430, 501 to 530. I'm doing it in 30-day segments. So we're staying at about 1-to-1 on that. It's a little over 1.06, 1.1, so forth. And so I did the last two are 14-day averages. And again, we're staying right at about 1. So we're still at 1-to-1 transmission if you look at the R now. Now, I won't even dare go into to tell you how this is calculated, but it is very efficient in telling you what's going on. It's what the epidemiologists, if you listen to the news, they talk about it all the time. So if we'll go to the next slide, and this is doubling time. And doubling time basically talks about how many days it takes for, if you've got 2 cases, how many days does it take for those 2 to turn into 4, or 4 turn into 8, or 8 turn into 16? It's a doubling time. And that lets you know how, again, that's an indication of spread. And this may be one of the lights at the end of the tunnel about where this may be an early indicator that people may be doing what they're supposed to be doing a little bit more than what we did before. Because the higher up this is, if you go up to the top of there, it's 46 days. So what that means, around June the 3rd, or June the 9th, I guess it was, June the 9th, it took 46 days from whatever number it was to double the number of cases that we had. If that makes sense. And so the lower you go, the better off, the worse you are. Okay? Because if you look at 7-2, about July the 2nd, we were doubling the number of cases we had every 9 days. So every 9 days, if we had 10, 9 days later we got 20. 9 days later we got 40. 9 days later we got, if you can understand. So so as of the 29th, we've moved up to 17 days. And this may be an early indicator that people may be doing a little bit of what they're supposed to because of Delta right now. There are other factors in this too. I'm cherry picking here, and I'm cherry picking hoping that that's what it's showing, that it's an early indicator that people may be doing a little bit. This could be for some other reasons as well. And it could be just something that has nothing to do with what people are actually doing well. It could be, but I'm choosing to believe that maybe people are doing something better. But if it is, it's an early indicator. It's sure not showing up now in our transmission rate. So that's the end of my slides. Now, having said that, we look compared to, we look bad. It looks bad as we stand right now. And I wanted to give an opinion on this, and because I can see what's going to happen if we start putting our kids back in school together now that this transmission rate is high as it is. It's going to be a disaster. Okay? Now, do I have a crystal ball? No, I don't. But I have the next best thing to it, and it's looking at this thing for 5 or 6 hours a day and following the numbers and knowing from history how this thing works, and looking at other systems that have done this and know what the outcome is for the other systems. So, if you'll go on down to my thing, you'll notice that I did have an opinion, and I wanted to give it. And I guess you've read it already, but I do not think that our children should go back to in-person classes until we get this transmission right down in our county. You're just asking for trouble. You're asking for disaster. It is now. Again, the last 2 times that we spoke, I wasn't quite as pushy on saying with this opinion, because I guess I was an optimist, hoping that we could see this thing change and hoping people would start doing what they're supposed to do in this county and start wearing masks and doing the things that they're supposed to. Because trust me, the only way this is going to come down is for people to do those very simple things. And everybody doesn't have to do it. We get 80% of the people doing it. We're going to see some numbers come down. How do I know this is going to work? Because there's been it's evident. It's evident based. I know places that once they finally get around to people doing what they're supposed to, the numbers come down. And if the numbers come down, then I have no problem from a medical standpoint, from the transmission part. Now, with the numbers down there below 3, is there a chance that our child is going to get it when they're back in school? Yes. I'm not going to say that they're not going to get it, that we're not going to have a case or 2. But it's like looking at it's like looking at something. A moon happens about once every 6 months versus the moon comes up every night. It's the rest goes up. And when you go past 10% on the positivity rate, you're above 10 on the 10 for 100,000 on the 14 day, you're just asking for trouble putting kids back together at school again. And we know that the kids probably are not going to be as sick as the parents or as an adult. We know that. That's a given. They're not. Now, does that mean that some of them's not going to end up being sick enough to go to the hospital and have permanent lung damage or some kind of damage? Yes. Is there not? Is there a chance that one has this Kawasaki-like syndrome and could die? Yes. Yeah, it's possible. But you're really getting risky when these numbers are high that this is going to happen. Plus, when the kids get it, I'm not only worried about the kids, I'm worried about the teachers, and I'm worried about the bus drivers, and I'm worried about the kids taking home to grandma. The more kids that you get in school, even if they're not sick, there's more of them taking home to mom and grandma, and a lot of those are immunocompromised. So I would not be doing what I should be doing for the county if I didn't advocate for not putting kids back in together at this point in time until we get these numbers down. Now I spoke with Mr. Smith. He and I talked quite a bit. He had a plan, and I really like his plan. Mr. Smith, do you mind if I just toss it back to you? And I think your plan. We talked about this a lot. Do you mind? You could probably do better talking about that than I can as far as the plan goes.
What we discussed is obviously, I think you're going to get the same place where you go, because looking at numbers forward. Okay. The two principals, step in here just a minute. Part of my concern is we based it where we started our sports back. And how many times, Dusty, have you already been shut down?
I've had to shut football twice, cheerleading, volleyball, and golf.
Shane,
Since
what?
February. Everything but football has been shut down.
And I know we've got a plan, I understand that, but we have prepared either way, and I just want y'all to know that. It ain't gonna make any difference to us, we work, we've got jobs, but we do have a plan if it's something once I think it's gonna get there, it don't matter. That's just my opinion, I'm not a doctor, but I think I am a numbers person, you can look where it's going. We've gotta be as prepared as we can if we decided to go something different than what I think what Dr. Duke is alluding to. If we started, I would ask you this: if you do decide to do nothing, that's great. If you decide to do something, that's fine. But the only thing I'd ask from us, please keep your dates the same. You know, I don't think that from everything I've researched, and Dr. Duke, am I correct? And you agree on it? We're not going to accomplish anything by pushing it back.
Exactly. I agree with you. I don't think you're going to accomplish anything by pushing it back. Honestly, the reason why I say that is because if you push it back 2 weeks, I don't see our numbers changing in 2 weeks, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm just looking at it from a very objective standpoint. I'm not trying to be subjective about this. I'm looking at just the numbers. I don't see our numbers, I don't see it changing enough. Even if it's changing, I don't see it changing enough in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or maybe even 4 weeks. If everybody put a mask on tonight and did everything like they were supposed to, there's a lag period on when we start seeing the numbers change. And that's, so I don't see that, pushing it back 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever is the way to go with this. That's my opinion.
And I think, Robin, you'd asked me, about would it help us as far as getting better prepared? I think, and I was talking to staff member right here, we're not going to be, any technology is going to be swamped, they're going to be killed. Teachers, it's going to be, whether we start now or whether we start after Labor Day, I don't think that's going to affect. Yes, we'd have more devices in, but by the time the training and what would have to go into place to get is gonna be the same place. We're gonna have the same challenges, whether we start tomorrow, we're prepared as we would, I think, after, it would just be the effect of getting more devices in and giving them more time to get them programmed. That'd be the only advantage I can see to that. I think you're gonna get into the end, you get into people changing where we've had a lot of our personnel and a lot of our people in the community that didn't take vacations, they put them off the fall break, spring break, and you're gonna, and this board can do anything it wants to, but when you change the dates, we still have to go in front of the calendar committee, we still gotta go to the State Department, gotta go through pre-approval. That's an ordeal. It's not just as simple as saying, hey, we're gonna change and bump it back. There's a lot goes into that on the approval of it. It can be done, something you gotta do, but I would highly recommend against that because that's just my opinion again. We'll do what you asked us to do. That was obviously a concern. Joe had a good question about training of the teachers, the timing. It's gonna be training, I had one teacher tell me that, they might schedule it like we do, our open houses, parent-teacher conferences, they might bring in, regardless how we do it, bring in, basically train parent and the child at the same time, or maybe if it was, neighbors or brothers that lived in the same house or so on, they could get those kids in and get them acclimated to how to get on the computer, how to use the passwords. We're gonna have to teach her, regardless of what we're on, our teachers are gonna have to learn to reteach, basically, because I just think it's a matter of time, we're gonna be on some type of web-type base teaching at some point, and I think we all understand that. So I think, and then, athletics comes to play. I think, to some degree, we could follow whatever we do, whatever the TWSAA recommendations are, and be safe on that and have something to back up on with that. I don't see how at the current rate, and I've coached my whole life and I'd be in a bad situation right now, I won't play, but I don't see if the numbers don't change how we can play. We got somebody in quarantine every day, and I just don't see how it can. What's your guys' opinion? Do you think it's gonna be a challenge to have teams?
Sorry.
Do you think it's gonna be a challenge to play ball? We're not cutting it out, I'm not saying that, but do you feel like it's gonna be a challenge to keep by the governor's new 14-day mandate?
It's already a challenge.
It is. And looking at our football schedule alone, contact sport, first team we play, Macon County. On the highest spot, the second game we play will be Gordonsville, but it's still, we're all Smith County. If our numbers are going up, Macon County's the highest place around right now. Sweaty boys spitting on each other.
I know our community, we need this, so we need it for healing, and hopefully we're trying to do every mandate that's possible. What we went through and the chemicals and the supplies, and I hope that it's kind of hard to reteach kids in a few weeks, and you've taught them their whole life to be together and love each other, and now they're having to learn to stay sick. And that's part of the learning curve. We're gonna have to reteach our kids even when we come in for these short groups. It's kind of hard to tell a 6-year-old to stay 6 foot apart when their best friend, and same with football, there's just a lot of challenges going into this, and I just felt like from my point of view, I needed to catch you all up on the updates on where we're at, so that you understand all that's going into this. It's just not one person making a decision, and I told one board member that, I don't know. I go to bed and get up different. I don't know. I pray about it. There's not, my wife will tell you much don't bother me, but this has bothered me. I don't know the right thing to do. I want to do the right thing, and I want to make sure, number one, I want to make sure that our children and our staff is protected. That's my ultimate goal. Even over an education, because if they're not here in education, they're not going to do any good. So,
Mary, do I remember correctly from the surveys that went out?
what did she say?
Survey. She's talking about the survey.
What about the survey?
The surveys that went out, am I correct that about 70% or so of the households in our county had a device that they could use?
The survey showed 78%.
Okay,
That's off the top of my head, but I I hope that's a correct number, but I think that's a very, I hope that's correct, but I hope when we get in, I don't know if some of them will be outdated and, you know,
Right.
broken, and I hope that's a correct number. I feel like it'll be a lower number than that, but it also showed we had 85% internet coverage in the county. I don't know that that's a realistic number either.
Yeah.
So, but I do think it's better than we thought,
But
okay?
we would have sufficient devices well above to accommodate the remaining 500 or so kids that doesn't.
Well, we've got,
right?
Robin, we've got 1,200 new Chromebooks ordered. Now, those go to teachers too, okay? We feel like we've probably got enough devices to cover it in the county, but many of those will need to be updated, and as they come in, we would update those. Of course, you've also, like Joe, like you said, regardless of the point, if we start back, go back to school like we talked about, the blended, like we've approved, we still need to get those kids in, and it's gonna take a 2 or 3 week process probably to get those computers out to the kids and the parents, and let our teachers understand, because I think regardless, we're gonna really try to push our teachers to get very technologically oriented quick, just in case, so that we can get, and at the worst case, if we end up staying in school, there's much more depth going in on the technology, so it's not gonna be a negative from that end of it if we approach it from that, in my opinion.
What is your opinion for what we should do as a district?
I told you, I've changed, I try to put the information out there and try to be neutral till you guys put me in, and I don't do that to pass the buck, because that's my job. I originally thought we ought to go back, and that's the reason I was so adept with the numbers, because Gina and I figured out, we really felt like it was better a month ago to wait and go after Labor Day. Well, I'm a numbers person, you know, and I saw the numbers doing what they were, just like graduation. I thought we did a fantastic call having our graduation when we did compared to the people around us. We got it in, we didn't have, with no issues, had 2 fantastic graduations. Those guys back there done a fantastic job, not to practice, and everybody really bought into it in the community. You know, and I'm telling you, I really do. I think I try to learn. I'm trying to get as much information as I can. You know, I know it's kind of hypocritical what I'm gonna say. If we go back to school, my boys, I think I told Ricky, I'm a daddy first. My boys are gonna go back to school if we go back to school. And we have just as much right to do virtual or as anybody else. So, but I believe in what we're doing enough to do that. With the information from talking to Kim and I've talked to numerous doctors, but Dr. Duke, I think we're going to end up at the same place anyway. I hope I'm wrong in that, but I feel like we're headed to the same direction. You know, I really feel like the virtual plan is a fantastic plan. We'll make what we voted in work. We're good either way. You know, we're ready to go. But I think we really ought to take a strong look at these numbers. I mean, I went back there today and just, you know, less than 2 months ago, we were at 23,364 in the state, 34 in Smith County. Less than 2 months, we're nearly 1,33 and 332 just in Smith County. You know, we're at Smith County what we were 2 months ago for the whole state. And, you know, I know some people says, and I guess I was one of those people. I don't know how bad this thing is, but now it's affected people that I know. I think, you know, Dr. Duke, I don't think you care for me using you for it. I didn't realize that you had lost about 40% or a percentage of your lung capacity over this disease or virus. So it is real. I don't know what the answer is. Sometimes I think that, I told Dr. Duke, sometimes I think the person that doesn't have any symptoms or not very sick is the most dangerous, because they're telling people it's not bad, and you know, and then it's killing others. So I don't know, Robin. I'm not trying to get out of it. I go to bed one way and wake up another, but I really think we better load up as much as we can on getting these kids adept on the computer and get the devices out there. And you're basically doing the same thing, in my opinion. The way I would still recommend, if you chose right now to go, if we chose tonight or tomorrow or next week to go to the remote, I would still say exactly the same training that we're going to do if we start school next week. Let's still get them in get them trained as much as we could for a couple of weeks or however that time period. You know, like I said, the high school, you know, you might have a student, there might be a depth enough with the gifted or your upper level courses, they might bring them in 5 minutes and they're out the door. But you might need to bring the elementary in, it might take Ashley and her class 2 weeks to get parents through. So I think you'd have to be very flexible on the plan. And within that, we need to make sure all the protocols are followed as far as spray downs and all temperatures and sign-offs and all that they're not having any symptoms. So either way we go, this is going to be a very complicated thing. And it's going to be, you know, you're not going to be allowed to hug anybody, but you need to hug a teacher because they're going to have a hard, it's not going to be, you know, kind of in limbo. I don't want to say they didn't do anything because they did, but they're going to be held very accountable. And, you know, I personally wouldn't want to be in front of a camera or whatever 3 or 4 hours a day, somebody critiquing me across the internet, but that's what's going to happen once that happens. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lewis,
Mr.
yeah.
Chairman. Just a couple of things. First of all, Dr. Duke, thank you so much, as always. We appreciate you. Mr. Smith, Director Smith, can I ask you a question? If we remain on calendar to open schools on time, the way that we have planned, can we basically implement remote and virtual learning without putting children back in the buildings, in the classrooms right now? Can we make that happen?
what do you say, Angela? I can't hear you.
He said, are we ready to do remote or virtual without bringing kids back in the classrooms?
Ms. Lewis, we'll be, like I told Ms. Robin, we'll be as ready, other than we will have more updated devices. We're gonna face the exact same challenges if we bring them in tomorrow, or we're that ready. And Terry's sitting here shaking her head, I think, with me. And Terry being in her technology, one of our technology coordinators, but we're gonna face the exact same challenges if we come in tomorrow or if we do it at Christmas. That with us is gonna be a non-issue from that end. It's gonna be extremely hard regardless of the time. The only difference, we might have more updated devices, but we're still gonna have the same hurdles. I think we're as ready as we'll be a month from now, if that makes any sense.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you for that. I hope you can hear me all right. My only comment right now, really is just, I'm remarkably dismayed to see that our county has reached this point. And based on the information presented to us, we're basically we're standing on top of a disaster. Numerically, just looking at these metrics and things. My personal feeling, I don't know about the rest of the board, my personal feeling is based on this and where we're headed as a county, I know it will take you a little time to get your arms around doing the remote and the virtual and all that, and that's fine. I mean, time is one thing that doesn't cost a human life. But I cannot ethically or morally remain in the same position that I was in when all this began. I am, based on this information and watching these things climb every single day and seeing where we are, and the threat level that it places on our children, our employees, and our families out there, transmitting to our families, grandparents, parents picking kids up after school. I can't be supportive of putting children back in a classroom at this particular time. I think we need to, and this is just my opinion, but I think we need to refocus on the remote and virtual learning at whatever amount of time it takes. Open schools like the plan and do that. But I can't be supportive of putting children in a classroom. That's my opinion.
Anybody else got a?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make my comment. I've waved this way, and I've waved this way, and I've waved this way, and all of us is put in a position that we don't know which way we're gonna wave. Whatever decision we make, Some people's gonna like it, some people's not. And I don't care, I'll make a decision, and I'll stand with it when I make it. But according to what Dr. Duke has said, I don't think we're gonna get no better. I think the state of Tennessee, and I was gonna ask you a question, which I think I already know the answer. You're talking about the 3% and the 5% and the 10% threshold. And the state was at over 8% of the threshold. How many counties in the state of Tennessee is under the 5% threshold? And I think I know the answer to this, but I want to see if you know the answer to this. How many is actually under the 5%, if any?
Was that, were you asking me?
Yeah, how many counties is actually at or under the 5% threshold of the state of Tennessee, when the threshold you put up here? Do you know?
There's probably none under the 5%. There's two, I believe, is the last I looked, there were two that was under the 10%, but I don't think there's any under the 5%.
So with that being said, that most of Tennessee is already over the 5% threshold, and I'm like Mr. Smith, I don't see this thing going away no time soon. I think it's going to get worse. I think if we delay, we're going to miss some golden opportunity to get these kids back started. I think eventually, if we started today, I think eventually in a month, if it takes that long, or 6 weeks, the state of Tennessee is probably going to be shut down in the school systems anyway. If not, we shut down again for everything, which I hope don't happen, which would be a disaster. But my opinion is, guys, and I don't care whether we do it virtually, I don't care if we do it remotely, I don't care if the kids want to come to school and put it back to school. I believe we start next week like we planned. And personally, I've got no problem with remote learning and just bring the kids in, get them acclimated, whatever date we can take it all remotely, let's take it. But I mean, we'll have to bring some kids in small groups, wearing their masks, sanitizing, temperature checks, you know, and hopefully nobody comes in and contaminates us. But I think we ought to go ahead and get this thing started. And like I said, I don't see nothing bad about remotely or virtually. And honestly, the ones that made some of the people wants to come to school. But I think we need to get school started because the students has been out of school since March. And like I said, I have no problem with it being remotely. I mean, I have no problem with that. If everybody's can get a device or virtually or but I just think we need to make sure we go ahead and start a in-service tomorrow, and is it Wednesday the first half a day or whatever, and do our A-B schedule or A, B, C, D schedule or whatever schedule, and get these kids rolling and get them going, because I'll be honest with you, I honestly, personally, myself think we'll all be remotely before too long, because, you know, the numbers, as Dr. Duke pointed out, is not going down, they're kind of going the other way. And I don't know where the other way is going to stop. I don't know. And if there was a cure today for this thing, and there was enough vaccines to give everybody in the world one, Dr. Duke, I'd say it'd take 2 months probably just to get everybody shot up and get this thing knocked out, if that was the case. So I feel like Corona's going to be here probably, guys, probably all the way through the winter, probably all the way mostly through this school year. And hopefully maybe we can get the curve and get it down and we can get the kids sometime back into a classroom setting. But personally, myself, I'm for let's get started next week. And if remotely how the board wants to go, I got no problem with that, or virtually, or if you want to put them back in the classroom. But I think the kids need to get back into school.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Lewis?
just for the sake of seeing how, you know, board bills, and thank you all for letting me zoom in. I'm sorry I'm not there present. I'm going to do this, and then we'll just see what happens. And I'm talking to Director Smith as well. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, she's translating for me, Scott.
All right, sir.
She's translating.
Mr. Chairman, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a motion that we start school year calendar as planned. However, that we do so with the motion of working remotely or virtually and keeping the children out of the schools until these numbers, whatever that may be, reaches such a point that we've hit a level of safety that's reasonable. I mean, and beyond 10 on the scale of what I'm listening to here, we're going to entertain a disaster just placing back in the rooms. I don't see how we can avoid that. And Tommy, I agree with you 100%. It might last. I don't know how long it will last. But it just seems like we're looking at a disaster. So I'm going to make a motion that we go ahead and start the calendar year as planned, but that we work in a fashion for our children to get their education remotely or virtually, whatever training or et cetera that takes. And I'll put that in form of a motion.
And we'll have to have a phase-in period also for this.
Remote.
Let me ask this, one thing that I would like to ask to the board, if that's something that you choose to do, and I've talked to Pold and talked to different principals, I know Angela has too, but it needs to be for a 9-week period, because you can't jump them on and jump them on, you know what I mean? The grading and the whole system, it's gonna be a massive undertaking, you know, it's not gonna be a 2-week and the number, you know, we'd be something we'd have to evaluate on that 7th or 8th week and then look at, you know, going back to school.
Well, not only for our schedule, not only for the school system, but parents need to know that too.
Yes,
They need to be
we can't
able to
jerk them,
plan
and I feel, anyway, for
accommodation.
parents, I mean,
Before we go on to study motion, let me ask one more question. If we decided to go remotely and we start doing the phasing, because listen, you're gonna have to bring the kids in a small group and parents get this, and we do the phasing, is there any need to go virtually?
well,
It
no, you
would be
wouldn't,
remote.
Would we
even,
phase out the
even by the
virtual?
state plan that you wouldn't go virtually, I mean,
We
that,
would say we were all
yeah,
remote.
we go remote, you know.
And let me make sure I understand the word remote. Like, remote would be, we would have some kind of schedule, like a normal school day. The teacher will be in her classroom or his classroom, they'll be in front with a camera. The students will log on to their devices. It will show up that Tommy's present in class, and they would do their teaching. Can the students then interact with the teacher by email or by,
Yeah.
I know it's not like Zoom, they can't talk.
Well,
They
no,
can.
they would all be,
They can.
they would all be at the same thing, but
Okay.
that's a fantastic question, because that's one thing, what you would do, you'd set the schedule up, and obviously, they're not going to lecture for 6 hours,
No.
okay? But whatever that schedule is, all right, and it might even be, we even talked to the teachers sometime back, it might even be that they ran live, and then take, like, if Brian got off at 3 o'clock and he wanted it would run live, and then we'd have a maybe tape from 3 to 6, they watch the lesson, you know, it could be very flexible. But you would have like a chat box possibly, like, let me use my wife for them. She might teach from 9 to 12, 9 to 1, whatever. All right, you might have a chat box from 1 to 2, then you might have a live call in from 2 to 3. So you'd have live interact, there's a lot of, some of the stuff I saw the toolkit, I got some of the ideals piecing together from the state. You could actually have a lot of live interaction. You'd actually have a much better personal experience on. I personally, for my child, would much rather have the remote as I had the virtual. Virtual's putting them on a computer, go down it, and there's not a lot of interaction on that. Okay, this is actually the next best. There's nothing going to replace, in most cases, being in front of a teacher. You know, you're not going to replace that from the socialization to the, hey, can I ask a question or come and help me? But this will be as close as we can get to it, in my opinion, if we're not there with them. It'll be much different than what we saw from March on. This is going to be a very intense, to say the least, for teachers and students and parents.
Well, let me ask another question, and let's don't forget, Mr. Lewis has a motion on the table. How about our students that maybe need RTI or special ed? Will we be able to give them some one-on-one training?
We will have to. We may,
We'll
and we
work
talked
something
about that
safe
too, Tommy.
with
We don't know exactly from the state regulations, but we know that, you know, I'm just giving examples, okay? Because I've got a little background in SPED, I've been a special ed director. It might be the fact that you opened up, like I talked to Sean over there, you know, it might be that, just saying hypothetically, you might open up for OT services Tuesday from 8 to 12 and have walk-ins, or might even actually run a car to get those kids and to keep them segregated. You wouldn't want to put them back in a group, you know, but it, you know, and it might be that homebound, we have, you know, especially at homebound teacher, it might be that some of the homebound, if, you know, once we had the mask and properly trained, that some of those special teachers might even have to go into the homes with those sped students. We've not got a lot of direction from the state on anything, to be quite honest, but that's a federal program. We feel like we'll get a lot of more structured mandates on what that will encompass, and it will be based on the IEP, which is a federal contract. So that's something we'll have to work through. But yes, they would have a different kind of service: speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and just SPED itself, depending on, you know, the level of where that child is.
That was a question. I talked to a lot of people. I talked to 2 families that had special needs children, and they said they have got to get back with something consistent.
Got to.
Because they said right now they're getting so far behind.
Yeah.
One of the families has even brought in a private tutor trying, but it's not, they said it's not the same.
Nope.
They've got to have some sort of consistency, and it's hurting them.
Another question, us going remote or virtual, does this fall with any of our funding? Is it still okay with the state that we do this, or are we mandatory, we got to be?
The numbers, my understanding, will count on the caseload. Like if Angel's got 17 in there, and that funding will be the same, okay? If you go virtual, it'll be the same. The only thing is virtual is a lot of dollars, because we're gonna have to, right now, based on Friday night and Sunday, I worked on this a little bit, 351, you're gonna have to hire, some of it will soak up within the numbers, but like, for example, go across Union Heights, all right, they're losing, they got 2 in kindergarten, 2 in first, 1 in second, 3 in third, and 2 in fourth. That won't affect the teacher. In other words, you're not gonna lose a teacher because of the numbers. That's just you see what I'm saying? It's not gonna affect you, but now when you add that up, you're losing a teacher, so to speak, at the end of the column. So what that's gonna end up costing right there, we'd have to put, probably, looking at numbers, you'd have to put at least 1 virtual teacher there, if not 2. So we're gonna have.
Just at that school.
Just at that school. So you're probably gonna have to hire 13 to 16 teachers to incorporate this extra, plus the licensure, which is what, $60,000 to $80,000 range. Is that approximate? Is that many? It might more than that, ain't it?
What,
That's
Yeah.
what I was coming at. When if we went virtual, what's it gonna cost us?
$6,000 to $8,000, $100,000, in my opinion. It's not
That's
remote.
not remote.
So you're saying
though.
six-
Not remote, virtual.
virtual, that's what he's asking, virtual.
Virtual.
That's what I wanna
Yeah,
know.
that's
To be,
what-
to be clear, we're talking about Odyssey Wear, right?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously, where, and the
And
hiring,
teachers.
Oh,
You know-
that many teachers, yeah.
So why wouldn't we decide just to do remote, and is it too late to pull virtual?
well, because it's a state mandate. It's, or not a mandate,
No,
but that's the way
If you
they.
do remote, it takes over virtual. You don't have to have the virtual,
Well,
because they will.
But the
have
reason
to-
we went that way in the first place, it was the recommendation of the state.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what if we decided we wasn't gonna do virtual, and what we're talking about now is doing remote, and just put the virtual kids in remote? I think they'd be better off in remote.
But they would, but the parents we've
Yeah.
talked to, now, you know, we've always had the Odyssey Wear for, you know, for students and, yeah, for, students wanting to graduate early, or students wanting to, for like our juniors and seniors, you know, as college, upper level college, but that kind, that wouldn't change, but, the parents I personally talked to, I think some of them even confused the difference between, and I was, I mean, it's hard to understand the difference between virtual and remote. Most of them, that's what they don't, the ones that wants to be virtual, and I don't want to speak for all of them, but the ones I spoke to, they don't want to be obviously in with other students, and this right now with this virus going on, being a possibility for whatever, but they love the idea of being with their teacher live every day. They're not wanting necessarily all of them the Odyssey. That's not the issue with Odyssey Wear, and it's very minor to say the least of the coursework until you get in. It's great for the high school, upper level high school.
And now that you mentioned high school, biology, if I have some lab work or something, will we have to provide lab work, or do you do that toward the tail end of the school? Is it lab work that you have to dissect a frog or something?
Well, I
Do you
think,
have that, or do you not?
well, we've talked about this. I think that if you do this, that you gotta be very careful, because the next thing you know, we'll be back in school, okay? But that's where those guys back there, we've gotta hold them very accountable. I've made that statement. CTE is another example. If I've got woodworking or ag or, you know, there, I don't see nothing wrong if it was scheduled right, you bring those kids back in labs, because if you don't, we're gonna get behind college coursework. When our kids go to college, 'cause they're not gonna change their standards. And I think you could bring the lab in, that teacher would have the time to do that. You could bring your lab in and spread it out, maybe have 5 at a time spread out, or same kind of like the SPED, the specialty areas, kind of like some of your CTE programs. You might work, you could, to get those hours in needed, I think you could look at some of that being flexible, kind of exactly like we were gonna do anyway.
Now, suppose when we done it.
Click,
we done that.
Can we've got a motion on the board, can we go ahead and get a second and then open it up for discussion?
I think he needs to amend it.
Well,
Mr. Blue?
I'm trying to.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
If you'll permit me, I'm going to amend my motion that we open schools as planned on this calendar. However, we do so with the students attending remotely. And then, of course, I know there's gonna be, things that we're gonna have to overcome through that process, but we've got a very capable director of schools. And I'm sure he'll stay on top of that and work through it. I know it's gonna be a challenge, but I have confidence in him and all of our employees, so I'm going to amend my motion, to eliminate virtual, and do it remotely. I think listening to some of this would be more cost effective, but not only that, it would probably be a better learning experience for each child. So I'll amend my motion to that, sir, please, thank you.
If I can, before we go any further, Mr. Lewis, with all due respect, I still think you got your motion wrong. I think we have to include a virtual option because that is what some kids are gonna have to have. I don't think we need to exclude a virtual option, but I think we need to do it in addition to a remote option. Am I correct in that, Mr. Smith?
No, the state.
The virtual option is if you're bringing them in person.
I'm sorry?
The virtual is if they are bringing them in person. It's the option versus in person.
Right, but what I'm saying is, are we maintaining that as a dual option? That's my question.
The same way it was in the past. That's like it was if we was not, no one, you know.
But I don't want to eliminate the ability to use Odyssey Wear for kids who have to have that option.
Yeah, like kids that move in, the kids that were, we used some going on
I'm
for
not
upper level
clear.
college at that
Something
grade.
like credit
Mr. Winkler
report.
may be
Yeah.
not clear
I
either.
don't-
That's the same as it
My
was.
understanding is you've offered the virtual option already. Certain parents and students have signed up for that, and they had to commit that through not 9 weeks, but through the first semester.
Yeah.
And they have signed up for the virtual option, and that's been part of your package that you submitted to the state that was approved, that you had that virtual option in that. Is that correct? And with Mr. Lewis's motion, take that away from those individuals that's
That's
already
my
Yeah,
signed
we
up.
would, yeah, we would, if we, the remote would replace it, Ms. Winkler. Other than what, I think what you're asking, Robin, it's always an option, like for kids that move in here, upper level, you know, if I wanted to graduate early, you know, we have the board approve, that wouldn't change. That's still, I think that's the question you're asking, like we always have, but it would replace people that had signed up. We would now go, this one option, because, so we'd have everybody in the same.
But if the remote lasted 9 weeks, let's just
Yeah.
say it worked out, would everyone then, you wouldn't have a virtual option?
Well,
Take it through the
we
first
could, that
semester.
would be something, I think we would have to go, we could go back and revisit again, just like, we could go right back like the blended schedule again for that second 9 weeks, and it started, would be right where we are today. That wouldn't be a problem there, because you can get the licensure, just be up here, you know, the same thing again, the same obstacles getting teachers and so on.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Mr. Moore? Now we'll open it for discussion.
And like I said, we'll have to have a phase-in period, get these people in here.
Now, doing this remote,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be speaking over anybody, if I could just say one word. I understand, this is gonna be a very dynamic set of circumstances. And I know, I heard Tommy say that we would have to have a phase-in, and I agree 100%. And we'll probably have to have a lot of things that we have never experienced before, because we're in an unprecedented set of circumstances. But at the same time, I do have a great deal of confidence in our director of school. I've got a great deal of confidence in all of our staff. And I think that we just need to just hang in there and work through this thing and let the process work. I think it can. I think we need to have confidence in Director Smith to iron out the wrinkles, and he'll get that taken care of. I don't have any doubt in my heart.
Okay. Mr. Shoulders, yeah.
okay, I've got two questions. First of all, if we, like I say, do this strictly remote, and for some unheard of reason, in 9 weeks, this coronavirus has got, won't it be a whole lot easier to, in other words, we can just stop the remote right then and just bring it right back in, and it wouldn't be a big.
We would be probably, that would be a great, actually would probably be more depth, because we would be so far advanced on technology, so we could use it more in the classroom where we need to be anyway,
Right.
but no, not versus, if you go like we are now, we're gonna have to purchase, I understand, the licensures for the year. So, you're locked in that contract.
Now, my other question is, on the ones that signed up for this virtual, how will we deal with them that's already committed on this?
Well,
That's the only thing.
we would just have to call them and tell them that's no longer an option, that we're, the whole school as a whole was going, there's nothing wrong with that if we're not offering it, correct?
No, sir, the only thing that could be argued is that they would be coming to the school.
Well, and we would make adjustments for that if they
For this
didn't.
phase-in, which they thought they weren't doing to start.
In other words, if you
They're
just
getting
didn't
the
want to come to
same
school to
service,
pick your
yes, sir.
computer up, we would have to make some kind of arrangement to send somebody to train you, maybe in home, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
And they could, hey, with that being said, they could reject and say, we do not want you, and that's fine, we would try to do it the best, we just want to offer as much service as we could. Tommy, if you said, hey, I don't want you to come in my home, I don't want to come pick it up, but I want a new Chromebook, well, we just have to disinfect it and leave it somewhere for them to pick up. I mean, anything we done above that would just be to serve them.
Could they also come to the central office and y'all show them how to use
Yep.
the technology?
Yep, like I said, I've had some of the teachers tell me, or, what, maybe they do, like open house, they might schedule to go, like from, that we wouldn't make them do that, but if teachers wanted to be accommodating and say, hey, I'm gonna be here from 8 to 8 these nights, because I know, Joe, you work till dark, and I'm gonna meet with you, that'd be fantastic, you know what I mean?
But I see what you're saying, with these 351 right here, I think that you've got signed up for it, they would be, obviously, they wanted no contact with anybody.
There's a chance they wouldn't, there's a chance they'd say, that was my whole purpose, I don't wanna come into that school building.
Right.
And-
Now, but what you're telling me now is that you're gonna make accommodations for them to still.
If they'd still be logged into their teacher, they might say, I don't even want your Chromebook, because I'm afraid somebody
Right.
touched it, don't blame them.
Right.
I've got a computer, I don't need any help, they log right into their system,
Okay.
they're right in that class roll and rolling on with it,
Okay, gotcha.
so.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a little bit, because I'm gonna be probably unpopular on my vote, but I've had some questions asking me that I don't have answers for, and that's probably the reason I can't not go with what we went with before. I've talked to a lot of people, and most of the parents are like myself, that I can't teach them at home, and I know you've got a teacher there, and they don't have, either they both work, or they don't have the patience to work with them. And that would be me. I'm not a teacher. I can learn something myself, but I don't know how to tell somebody else how to do it. So I kind of feel their pain there. I don't, and that's a lot of people I've talked to. Second question I got, if you look out the window right now, and I'm sure it's probably not raining, that baseball field is covered up with kids down there that are not social distancing. Travel baseball, travel softball, AAU basketball, football just started up today. They're hitting. Competitive cheer's been going. I mean, I don't have an answer for that. Why can they do these and not be somehow in school together? I don't know. So I mean, I maybe you all can help me out. But I have no argument for that. And then the other one was, of course, the SPED issue. You know, it's the SPED kids need consistency. They need a rigid, and you know this better than anybody, they need a schedule, and they're getting so far. Those two families just are really upset. They're getting so far behind. So, and I don't have answers for any one of those three. I'm just, maybe you all can help me. Some of the board members, somebody in here, I don't know what to tell them.
I mean, and Brian, I don't mean this to come across, don't take it. You know, I have to tell my kids all the time, well, why they get to do it. Well, I can't answer that. I mean, you know, I don't mean it to be I mean, again, if there's anybody, I wouldn't be sitting here today without sports. I can tell you, it kept me working and straight.
Oh, I love sports, and don't take me wrong.
And my coach, I learned from the hardest man I ever had in my life. That's why I'm sitting here today, him and my father probably. But also, that don't make it, you know, I come in through here Monday night, and I'll be honest with you, and I don't want to offend anybody sitting here or watching on film, but I look down there at the ball fields, and they're sitting, Leslie and I sit there and sit, you know, they're sitting shoulder to shoulder, they're sitting, you know, and it does put pressure on us, because, you know, we have to ask the question. I can't answer that. My son plays travel baseball every 6 straight weekends. But, you know, we social distance, we, like Dr. Duke said, you know, we do it as a family, but, you know, you look at the ballparks, but I think that's why that things are going like this. He kind of enlightened me from my view, because I was, go back but, you know, we're going to have to do something to get people's attention to flatten this curve, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know, and I don't know, I can't answer for the ballpark, you know,
I'm just trying to prepare the board. If you go remote, that's going to be questions.
Yeah,
It's going to be ready for those questions, because they're going. If they haven't been asked already, they're going to be asked.
Well, and then once again, the majority of the people that you talk to want the kids back in school.
Yep.
Because you have mom and dads and stuff like that.
and I feel for them, childcare, you know what I mean?
The problem that we have, and I've got several comments here jotted down, so if I can have the floor for just a minute. Brian, I agree with you. And I agree with Barry, and that's the problem. Parents aren't willing to stop going to sports. Parents aren't willing to stop going to birthday parties. We have, you know, churches, which is important as anything in my life. But, you know, we've had to make some choices that I don't necessarily like, because that's what's best for me and my family. And until we start making changes across the board, that we're not going to see changes. We're going to have to stop going to the ball field. If you want your kids back in school, keep them at home. Stay away from Crump Harris. Stay out of Walmart. Stay out of Safeway. Do these things that Dr. Duke and everybody else has been telling us to do since March. But until people get serious about social distancing and wearing masks and doing those things, the only reason I pulled my mask off is because I want to be heard. A lot of times I get accused of saying things that I didn't say, or people want to know what my opinion is or whatever. I'm going to be real clear with what my opinion is, and it's not going to get any better. Our numbers in Smith County are what they are because people don't do what they need to do. We need to wash our hands. We need to wear a mask. You need to stay away from people, even if you love them. I've seen my brother-in-law one time, I think, maybe twice since March, because I love him enough to stay away from him. And that's hard. That is a hard thing. Keeping your kids at home is hard. I understand that. I want our kids back in school. Somebody asked me this week, why do you not want our kids to go back to school? I mean, that's ridiculous. Of course I want our kids back in school, but I want them back in school in a safe environment. This is a major inconvenience. It's a major inconvenience to not only us, it's an inconvenience to our teachers, our administration, our parents. God help them with the people that are having to make the decisions to teach at home or to stay at home or even resign from their job because they don't have childcare. I understand that. I understand the financial hardships. I get it. I'm an employer. I have people working for me that have small children. You know, a lot of employers are being flexible, but I get it. It's a tough decision. Dr. Duke, thank you for your insight, your input. Thank you for caring enough about our county to, you know, let us know where we're headed. These, you know, numbers are, you know, are scary. They really are. I don't have all the answers. I don't know all the answers, but I do know with what I do, the only way to get answers is to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And Dr. Duke, you're certainly in that category tonight because you know a lot more about this than I do, and I trust you. You know, I trust you. I don't. I'm not having to deal with somebody at a national level or even a state level. This is somebody local that has made his living in our community and cares about our community. So, Dr. Duke, thank you for that. We have to make a tough decision. There's no doubt about that. It's not going to be popular, most likely, and I'm sorry for that. But again, until people in this county start doing what they need to do to protect each other and care about each other enough to stay home, within 1 month, our numbers would be probably less than half of what they are right now. We're looking, as Dr. Duke showed us, a lag time of about 14 days, and that makes a huge difference. If we would just do that just for a period of 30 days, it would change the second 9 weeks. We can change the directory. It's within our power to do that. The problem is nobody's willing to take the steps that it takes to come to that. So, I mean, that's where I'm coming from. I appreciate all the comments, the calls. I appreciate that kids, you know, want to go back to school. I understand that. But if you want your kids back in school, then take other steps in other areas of your life to protect them, and we'll be back in school in 9 weeks. But if all this continues, we're going to be out the entire school year.
Brian, do you?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. McCabe.
Is any feedback?
No, you're good.
I'm gonna put my 2 cents worth in there on this. You know, my gut feelings is I wouldn't want nobody at risk to be coming back to our schools. And I'm more on your page where I've talked to some parents that's about high-risk students, and they still are saying, I want my kid back in school because the damage that's being done from them being socially distanced since March, it's starting to play with their own psyche, you know. And I think Americans, everybody's got their right. Robin's got hers, Scotty's got theirs, I've got mine. My opinion is, you know, I'm out here working, I'm in Missouri right now. I talk to everybody out on the road and asking their opinions. You get 9 positive responses to 1 negative that we want to face this and get it over with. And I feel like the numbers, they can be manipulated sometimes. I'm not saying for any reason, but, you know, you ask me what's the chance of rain day, well, that's 50% chance. Well, most people say it's 50% chance it's going to rain. Well, my aspect is 50% it ain't going to rain. So, just my opinion is parents in Smith County are no different than anybody else in this country, but they're ready to get their kids back in school. If we get in there, we see there's going to be a problem, then we'll take adequate measures to nobody here. I've talked to the director. He wouldn't risk his kids. He wouldn't risk any of our kids in this county of being exposed and being at high risk. But I think we've got measures in place to screen these kids when they come in. We're gonna check their temperature, they're gonna be taught some, if we don't get these kids back in school and get them started on some kind of level, I think we're gonna be setting them back for maybe years. I don't know. I think we're really just the ones that needs to be back in school, wants to be back in school, and the ones that don't, they can stay home and do remote learning. And that's fine. I respect that. Just like I don't wear a mask, I feel like that. I've been told that within 20 minutes of wearing one, it is useless. You need to put one on there for 20 minutes. Well, I would do that if I thought that was really necessary, Brian, but I just don't wear one. I feel like I'm, you know, that's just my choice, just like the choice that you wear it, but I don't wear it. So I feel like we need to start back like we started on our last meeting. If we have to make adjustments, we will make some adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. McKay.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments? If not, we have a motion on the table. We'll roll call. Mr. Manning.
No.
Mr. Shoulders.
No.
Mr. McCallum.
No.
Ms. Moore.
Wait a minute.
We're roll calling this motion.
We're-
Yeah, but I need the motion read again, because it's been 30 minutes since we had that.
The motion was by Mr. Lewis to start the calendar as planned with remote learning until at least 9 weeks. And then after that, it would be reevaluated if the numbers hit a level of safety they felt good with. And we'd have the small phase in with the computers the first of the school year where the kids could get used to them. That was the motion.
Okay.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Apple?
Yes.
No. So we have 4 no's, 4 yeses, so the motion fails.
Open up school.
So I assuming that just means we go back to our original, what we
Go back, blended, and then go back.
blended to the,
Virtual. Yep.
yes, go back to blended and virtual.
Oh.
All right. Do we have any need for executive session? If there's no need, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So much.
Mr. Manning, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. McCallum?
Second.
Mr. McCallum. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.